wonderful artists. They're here this morning speaking for two groups in Maui that actually are working together, two Kanaka groups, and very concerned about what's happening to Haleakalā. So I'm going to leave it up to them to present to the board. Mahalo for coming.
Aloha nui mai kākoʻo o kia ohina puamohala nubo. He keiki mai au no waipoli, I ka poli o Haleakalā kūkilakila. Aloha kākoʻo. Mahalo nui for having us today. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I'm just gonna share my screen to show our slides. Okay, so again, we're here on behalf of Protect Haleakalā, Kākoʻo Haleakalā, Kila Kila o Haleakalā, all the groups that are standing up in support of our mountain.
Sorry, I'm trying to learn.
So, as much as we are here to stand up for the physical space that is Haleakalā, we cannot do that unless we stand up for the worldviews of our kupuna, unless we learn to look at this space in a different way. And so we have to change the way that we think of time and space, and we have to look at it through the eyes of our kupuna. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand and to explain why Haleakalā is a sacred space. So as a mountain, Haleakalā is a living, breathing ancestral system that is 2 million years old. And it's filled with the kupuna who have been coming to it and evolving in it for 2 million years. These are the akua, aumakua, and kupua that we all know about. This is really a symphony of life that has been evolving over this whole time. And all of these plants and animals that exist in the system that is Haleakalā enabled us to come into being as Kanaka. And so we acknowledge them. And we look at this mountain system from sea to summit. It's not just this national park area. Again, we have to change our thinking about what part of this mountain matters to us. So when we go from sea to summit, what we see around Haleakalā, or what we used to see, what biologist Art Medeiros often talks about, is a lay of forest that once stretched around the whole mountain. And from that forest all the way to the pico, to the very summit, all of that is the Vauakua. It is filled with these kupuna, these ancestors that enable us to be. And that summit, or that pico, is really the most sacred part. So just as we in our mother's wombs are nourished by our connection, our pico, to our mother, so too is the whole mountain nourished by its connection, its pico, or summit, that connects it to the celestial spaces and the ohana there. From there, it draws Mauli, it draws life force, and it feeds the symphony of life, this whole system that exists 360 degrees around this mountain. We think about the East Maui watershed, this highly productive watershed. That is the work of Kane and Kanaloa. Kane's heat of the sun feeds the primary productivity in this space, and his fresh water and heat animate Haumea's fertility. So Haumea, who is also known as Papahana Moku, gave birth to our beautiful island, and then she took her heat and went underground. And so her daughter, Pele, when she is born, when she comes out of the earth, and she is that, again, this new manifestation of new land, she reshapes huge sections of this kuahivi. And so we also can't look at her activity as confined to the summit or to the Luapele. It stretches in both directions, east and west, and it goes from Kaupo and her holoku, her many flows out there, all the way over the Kualono, all the way down to Pu'uolai. Again, this is one ancestral system. And when she was doing her thing, Pele on Haleakalā, and Poliahu was also present, whose forms are ice and snow. When the two of them clashed, just like on Mauna Kea, they produced an incredibly specific type of dense basaltic stone from which our ancestors made their ko'i, which allowed them to do all the things. So all of these hana, all of these innovations, these amazing projects that our kupuna did, they all connect back to this Piko area. And then our resident goddess Lilinoi, she plays a huge role in regulating temperatures on our mountain. She casts her kihei kappa around as the lay of clouds that encircles our mountain, and the fog drip and the vai that she provides is vital as well. And so Kumuki Ope Raymond, in his testimony on February 18th, 2026, really summed this up in a beautiful quote. He said, the uwa'u, the ahinahina, the apapane, the iiwi, they are all in the kumulipo. Over time, those creatures and the shared experiences became felted into the kapa that is our mauli, our life force as Kanaka Maoli. Those plants and animals that comprise Hawaiian ecosystems are our family. So for us, this is a familial and ancestral obligation to protect this mountain. Two of the kupuna we're particularly concerned with are the ahinahina and the ua'u. I won't linger here now because I'll revisit these when we look at the DEIS. And so all of this also has to be taken in context of the 133 years of resistance that Hawaiians have had against the illegal overthrow and the many injustices that have happened in this land.
Thank you.
The lands at the summit of Haleakalā are quote-unquote ceded lands.
take the hat too.
The parcel in question was conveyed or granted by Governor Quinn in 1957. He allowed the leases of that parcel to the FAA. And so we are really concerned that there is enough, there has been too much of this activity on our mountain already. And so we don't want any more telescopes there. And I'm going to hand it over to Tiare to kind of contextualize the resistance to the various developments on our mountain over time.
I'm going to try to skim through this so we can get through our presentation. Okay. So Kākoʻo Haleakalā was founded in 2005 to protect the summit from telescoping military development. That was after years of resistance being led in the early 1990s by Uncle Charlie Maxwell, Uncle Les Kulaloyo, and Uncle Ed Lindsay, among other recognized kupuna that are no longer here today.
Fits really well.
The founding leaders of Kākoʻo Haleakalā include Uncle Ed Lindsay, Kumuki Ope Raymond, Auntie Mika Hala, Auntie Leohu Ryder. And I wanted to recognize them as we speak of them today. The purpose of their organization was to protect the sacredness of Haleakalā, to oppose the expansion of astronomical and military facilities on the summit, advocate for our rights, challenge the permits and approvals through legal action, and the history of our protection, of Kākoʻo Haleakalā's protection, became widely known for filing lawsuits against the DCAS, formerly known as the ATST telescope. Arguing that agencies failed to properly comply with environmental and procedural laws. They took this to court. They were originally denied their contested case, took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court actually ruled in their favor. And unfortunately, the DCAS was already half built. So there was a lot of failure by the state at that time. And so it goes, I'm gonna skim through the history of protection. 2010, BLNR permits approval. Hawaii's Supreme Court ruling, rules in favor of Kākoʻo Haleakalā, new contested case and permit reissued, and of course the final Hawaii Supreme Court decision. That was ultimately very unfortunate for Kākoʻo Haleakalā. So in that time, we decided we needed to start a younger hui, so we started Kākoʻo Haleakalā to support the efforts of Kākoʻo Haleakalā that were primarily made up of kupuna, and so Kākoʻo Haleakalā was formed. Also, that was the same time as the Mauna Kea situation. So these photos show some of the activation that took place, the aloha aina that took place on Maui. During that time, 34 of our kanaka were arrested on 3 different occasions. Here's one of our arrests that was up in Kula. We also had several arrests happen in Kahului or off of Mokulele Highway. And so here we are with the AMOS Haleakalā telescope proposal. In 2024, they held scoping hearings as they were going to start preparing their draft EIS. Over 500 community members attended, Kahului, Kihei, Pukalani, and in Hana. There was a meeting out in Hana. 600 plus written comments, all expressing opposition to further telescope and military developments on Haleakalā. Fast forward to 2025, the draft DEIS is released in December, a 516-page document, and our petition that we started is seeking to extend the public commentary period. And then, of course, in this past month, we've had 2 hearings on the draft EIS, one in Kihei, one in Pukalani. Both places were filled with opposition. Only one testifier showed up in support. And a lot of people signed up to testify, were unable to testify because we ran out of time. And so, they were denied the opportunity to speak.
Again, looking back at 2024, we want to also recognize the Maui County Council, who passed a resolution against the project. And again, as Tiare was saying, both nights in this most recent round of public commentary had a huge turnout of folks. And even though not all of us had time to, well, not all of the people who testified had time to take in this whole 516-page document in 18 or 19 days before oral testaments, they still turned out in great numbers. And so those of us who did have time or had to make time in our busy schedules with our 2 jobs and our kids to actually go through this whole document, pulled out a whole bunch of issues that we find really concerning. So the first of those is that they did a project redesign that tries to skirt HEPA, but we really argue, and this is where we are seeking your support for legal advice, we argue that Section 343 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes is actually triggered, as this proposed site is within a conservation district on state land, and there have been additional adverse effects found to this traditional cultural place, and so we believe that 343 is triggered. But we would like legal support to look at that or other avenues that Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation can help us to identify. We see, in 4 sentences in the DEIS, they just dismiss the idea of alternative sites, and I find this an egregious oversight. Perhaps they did some research that they didn't bother to share with us, but there is nothing in the DEIS about sites in the continental US or in other places in the world, and there are many. This facility is not meant to stare way deep into space. It's looking at near Earth orbit and objects in there, the millions of satellites that all the tech bros are trying to put up into space. And that also includes the American military. They want to put up huge numbers of satellites. They want to look at whose satellites are where and all of that stuff. So that's near Earth orbit stuff. They don't need to be on a mountain that is that tall, that's as tall as our mountain. They can be somewhere else, but they've failed to present any other alternative site analyses. Also of huge concern is the fact that arsenic was detected at above acceptable levels. Their strategy to deal with this is a containment in place strategy. They plan to bury this arsenic under 2 feet of clean fill. And the arsenic is coming off of building 1010, which is one of their buildings that has been rotting up there for years. So it has already been shedding arsenic and other toxic substances onto our mountain, which we believe it can eventually affect our groundwater. There's a fuel spill, the 700 gallons of fuel that were spilled on the top of Haleakalā. They still have not finished the remediation. And then I'm going to show you another slide about the conflicting information that they present on endangered species, again, especially the ahinahina and the ua'u, as well as their failure to address Section 106 of NEPA. So regarding the ahinahina, and I'm a botanist, I have a degree in botany. I've worked for years in native plant work with the rarest and most endangered plants. I didn't work with ahinahina in particular, but I've grown up on Haleakalā my entire life, and I have observed this species over many years. And so what we see in the draft DIS is one section in the back shows us that they have an automatically generated report with this watermark that says not for consultation, where they claim that the proposed project site does not contain critical ahinahina habitat. I completely disagree with that as a botanist. It is less than half a mile downwind from existing populations, and Tiare herself has seen hinahina trying to grow around the existing telescope pads. So they are well within what we would consider critical habitat. So they say here, oh, there's no critical habitat, but then in another section of report, they say that construction, so in the green and the yellow here, it talks about the effects that construction would have on both Ahinahina and Wa'u. Ground and soil disturbance could damage Ahinahina plants in the vicinity of the project. So they're talking about this 100-meter buffer. Sorry, the plants grow wherever they want. You cannot do that. In addition, the vibrations and the activity threaten to collapse Ua'u burrows. This is an endangered bird. You know, both of these species represent kupuna that are absolutely aiwaiwa. They made it all the way, you know, and actually the Ahinahina evolved on this mountain. It is the only place it has to grow. And so the fact that these species have persisted through time is amazing, and we cannot continue to present them with challenges that threaten their existence. The ACHP actually, this is a letter that is in the DEIS. They said, hey, where is your, where's the information that you're required to present? There's no copies of summaries of any views provided by consulting parties to include federally recognized Native Hawaiian organizations. So these guys say they've done consultation. I don't know who they've talked to. It's not in the report. And as far as I understand, groups or folks that they have consulted with are not allowed to remain anonymous. That's public information that we all should know so that we can ask questions and take issue with things if we choose to. So those are just some of the glaring things about the DEIS that we wanted to bring to your attention.
I'm going to speak to the fuel spill. So the fuel spill at Haleakalā is not just an accident. It's a warning. Years later, the cleanup remains incomplete in one of the most fragile ecosystems in Hawaii. Even a small contamination event is unacceptable. The fuel spill at Haleakalā is not just an, sorry, I already said that. But anyhow, if existing contamination cannot be fully addressed, how can the public trust additional development on this sacred summit? As you heard, it's unresolved. 3 years later, still, cleanup remains incomplete. And so there's a pattern of military environmental harm throughout the state of Hawaii. The U.S. military has documented history. I don't need to explain this to you guys. You guys are going, reevaluating the military leases, so you guys already know all of this. Koho'olawe, Red Hill, Makua Valley, the list goes on. And then the question is, national security for who? The U.S. military claims its project is unnecessary for national security, but we must ask security for who? Security for Americans living thousands of miles away in the continent? What about the people on Maui? What about the people in Hawaii? You know, Councilmember Keani Rollins made an excellent point at our draft EIS meetings. Who is going to protect us? Who? If we become a target in space wars, who now protects the people of Maui? And so we wanted to highlight some of the potential legal vulnerabilities. The cumulative impacts of existing observatories not fully addressed, endangered species, Native Hawaiian cultural practices, conservation district protections, public trust ceded lands obligations, the violation of Chapter 343, and this project would also violate our Maui community plan. And so we're asking for OHA support. You guys supported Kila Kila o Haleakalā throughout their years when you helped to fund Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation that took on this case. And they did an excellent job. So we're asking for your kokua. And I know we're running out of time. If Chair would grant some minutes to watch this video. If not, I understand. But there is a video that I wanted to share of Kumu Kiope speaking. When he testified at our Pukalani meeting, the whole room went quiet. It went still. And I just wanted to bring you into his realm to speak to the sacredness, if chairs would allow 5 minutes to share this video.
Thank you.
Sure. The video is 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to start that now, and then after the video, we'll go to questions?
Sorry, I think my sound is, let me just make sure I have my sound sharing on. Yep.
I stand in opposition to the proposed Nimitz Hwy Corporation. Acceptable action. No action alternative has to be the way to go. But tonight I want to focus my testimony on sight as sacred place. What I want to testify to this evening is a Hawaiian linguistic. What I want to do tonight. The reason I'm going that path is I want to try and help you understand the site's sanctity as a sacred place. And I believe we can all bear witness to it. I visualize the first kupuna to live in this place, the very first Kanaka to live in this place. Ola Boardroom was their language. It's how they communicated. It's how they expressed their worldview. They also made treks up to the summit. And remember, they were the first human beings here. No one had ever gone through the forest like they had done. No human. And as they went through the forest, they saw a little green bird flitting up in the canopy. And they said, I'm going to call that one Amakihi. And they saw a red bird with kind of black beak and a little bit of white. And they said, I'm going to call that one Apapane. The words came from those kupuna down to us. When we utter those words, it is an ancestral memory, keeping it alive. Then they continued on and they saw a scarlet red bird. Scarlet with a kind of an orange beak, and they called it what? I think there's some ancestral memory going on here. Why is that place sacred? Because when a people share their worldview with their descendants, and on and on and on, and follow that koihonua down to where we are today, we are a direct line to those very first human beings who helped us understand this place. Then imagine they get to the summit area. It's getting kind of dark, but a beautiful moon is shining. Pele is everywhere. Now, we all know that the word lava, L-A-V-A, that's not a Hawaiian word, right? Everybody understands lava is Italian. And that Pele is the word for molten rock. Lowercase p, uppercase p, goddess. Lowercase p, the molten rock. So when digging goes on in Pele, you are digging into an aumakua. You are digging into a kupua. You are digging into an akua. Let's make no understand. So our worldview is a little bit different than it's just, oh, that's lava. And I know that there's pahoihoi and there's ha'a, and I'm going to dig into it. No. You're going after an ancestor. And they're up there, and in that moonlight, they see a mind-blowing silver plant glowing in the moonlight. And they call that one Ahinahina. Beautiful. It's quiet. Quiet. The most quiet place they'd ever been. It's cold. And they're resting, contemplating. Whoa. Whoa. The Hawaiian petrel comes flying in from its flight to Lhasa, non-stop. The ua'u, the ahinahina, the apapane, they're all in the kumuliko. They are mentioned as that thread that we hold on to. And the sound that ua'u makes is its name. It's onomatopoeia. Lovely. Over time, those creatures and the shared experiences became felted into the kapa It is our Maui, our life force as Kanaka Maui. Those names we just voiced as ancestral memory, they ring out in our Meliko Inunuo, our cosmogonic creation chants. Those birds and those things that comprise the ecosystems of Hawaii are family to us.
Thank you for sharing that with us, and we really appreciate your presentation and for reaching out to our Chair Emerita and Trustee from Maui Island requesting to appear before the Board of Trustees. At this time, I will, you know what, let me recognize Chair Emerita for any thoughts or comments, and at that point, then we'll go to any other trustees that have questions.
Thank you, Chair. I'm familiar with what our two groups are doing on Maui, and I'd like to leave the time to my fellow trustees if they have any questions.
Okay, trustees, any questions? Anyone, any hands raised?
Trustee Akaka has her hand up.
Okay, great. Trustee Akaka.
Mahalo for joining us today and sharing with us some of what has transpired through recent time. This would be more a question for OHA, is if we've had anyone from our public policy team or community engagement or any representative from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs present or tuning into these, or if there's any testimony that has been provided, because I don't recall our BAE committee chair Brookwood and I discussing this or being brought to our attention. And I ask this as well because it is highlighted that these are our Hawaiian Kingdom Crown and Government lands, and OHA, that is part of our kuleana. And when I'm looking at the Department of Land and Natural Resources, their inventory, or what they refer to as the PLTIS, I could use some more information than what is provided based on what I'm seeing here. Could you share with us some of perhaps what you know in terms of the range of these Crown and Government lands and what specifically you're mentioning in terms of the coverage of the area and the maybe some of the history of it that we might not be aware of that we should know?
Well, we know that there are several areas up there that have been leased, right? UH manages most of the what they call Science City in the Pu'ukolekole area, but there is a small parcel that so the lands up there were essentially set aside by executive order. Governor Quinn, the last territorial governor, he set those lands aside and he allowed them to be leased. And so some of them were given to UH to be leased. So UH is the, essentially administering those leases. And what we understand, and I hope this is 100% correct, is that this particular parcel has been given to the FAA and they are leasing it to the DOD essentially, or the Department of the Air Force, Department of War, under them, Department of the Air Force, under them, Space Force. So, but we believe that the FAA is administering that lease, but it is a lease of state land. That is our understanding. But again, if we were to get legal support, to get legal counsel, we would check, of course, on all of these details.
In the scoping hearings, Kumukalekua brought up an excellent point at the scoping hearing. Show me the title. How did you get access to these lands? He requested at the scoping hearing that the DEIS present the facts on how they acquired the so-called lease, and they didn't put that into the draft EIS. Why? Because they cannot show clear title.
Yeah, and if they claim that this is actually federal land, then they can skirt around HEPA. They can skirt around our state environmental protection laws, and that's what they're trying to do. And so we believe that that is not okay, and that HEPA applies, Section 343 applies, and that's why we're seeking support for legal counsel.
Thank you for mentioning the executive order. When it comes to Crown and government lands that came under executive order, they still are Crown and government lands. So whether the claim is that through the executive order, this is now leased to this entity and subleased and so forth, I believe we still have stake in terms of what advocacy looks like. And I mean, there are many different military lease lands that we could refer to when it comes to executive order, but what I'm hearing is this is another part of the rest of our lands that are included on that. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
And like many other leases, it's $1 a year, which, as we all know, we should be entitled to revenue. But unfortunately, UH leased it to them for $1 a year.
Is the time frame 2029?
Or 2031, perhaps,
I think
for this one?
For Haleakalā, it's 2031.
2031?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Ahuna?
Thank you, Chair. I think I was speaking it's along the lines of what Trustee Kākoʻo was saying, but I think I see the person here that can speak to what we're talking about, but it's how we intake all this, how we advocate for it, and I think, I think we're set up now to that we can speak to this. So I see Deja already here, so I'm hoping she can come up.
Oh, hey girl, nice to see you.
Yep, she's back.
Long time no see. Okay.
Yeah, so I do know that we have the comment period, which is why I know that they've done a bunch of outreach in the community for comments, and so we have those comments. It's with compliance staff who are working on our agency comments on that. So I think it's important for us to hear and connect what's going on. That's Kai Markel's staff. So I just want to be clear, I don't directly manage folks there, but I do know it's we do work very closely together, and so I know it's something that we're following. So yeah, and thank you.
When the comment period is closing in, so
Yes.
part of the reason why we came here today is to ask for OHA to submit comments.
Yeah, it closes on March 16th, so time is of the essence.
Yeah, so perfect timing. I know they're on our radar, and so I know some folks, since I started right at session, as you folks know, I've been focusing on that, so it's good to see familiar kia'i, and yeah, thank you.
Other trustees?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Chair Merida, go ahead.
thank you. After hearing from my fellow trustees, I'd like to recommend that we have leadership in our administration seek out help from Native Hawaiian Legal Corps for the purposes of the Haleakalā groups from Maui.
Mahalo nui.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure that we talk to the administrative team, and sounds like Deja and Lena Allen Advocacy is working on it. So yeah, we will definitely talk to them after this, especially as we have this first round of comment period happening right now. Trustees, any other comments? Okay, well, here none. We'd like to thank everyone. Thank you for coming, and we really appreciate your time. Any last comments by our presenters?
Yes, Chair, please, mahalo. In closing, I just wanted to finish off with this. For generations, our kupuna have protected Haleakalā, not because it was easy, but because it was sacred. Haleakalā is not empty land for development. It is Wauakua, a place where our ancestors prayed, where rare life still survives, and where our children deserve to inherit something sacred and whole. Today, we ask OHA to stand with our lahui, to uphold your trust, responsibility, and help defend Haleakalā. Because once a sacred place is lost, it cannot be rebuilt. The question before us is simple. Will we protect Haleakalā now or explain to our children why we didn't? Mahalo nui for having us today. I really appreciate the time.
Mahalo piha.
Mahalo. Thank you so much. Okay,